There is a moment when you are watching an old science fiction film when something on screen stops you cold. Not because it looks dated, not because the special effects haven't aged well, but because you suddenly realize that what you are watching, something that was purely imaginary when it was made, is now your everyday reality. Because we are living right now inside a science fiction story, several of them simultaneously. We have just stopped noticing. Let me show you what I mean. The tablet computer, 1968. In 2001, A Space Odyssey, Stanley Kubrick's astronauts eat their meals while watching video content on flat rectangular screens they hold in one hand. The screens are thin, portable, display moving images with sound, and are clearly personal devices. The film was made in 1968. The iPad was released in 2010. The device that Kubrick imagined for the far future of 2001 arrived 9 years after the year the film was set. What is remarkable is not just that he predicted the tablet computer. It is how precisely he imagined it, the form factor, the use case, the casual relationship with the technology. His astronauts are not marvelling at their devices. They are watching the news on them while eating breakfast, exactly as you might do this morning. Arthur C. Clarke, who co-wrote the screenplay with Kubrick, also predicted communication satellites in his fiction decades before they existed. He was so accurate in his technical specifications that the geostationary orbit used by communication satellites today is formally named the Clarke orbit in his honour. The Communicator, 1966. The original Star Trek series aired in 1966. Captain Kirk and his crew used a device called a communicator, a handheld, wireless, two-way communication device that could connect to anyone, anywhere, instantly. The Motorola engineer Martin Cooper has said publicly that the original Star Trek communicator directly inspired him when he was developing the first mobile phone in the 1970s. He was holding a prop from a television show in his mind when he built the device that would become the ancestor of every mobile phone that exists today. But here is what Star Trek got wrong. The communicator was only a communicator. It made calls. Kirk's crew had separate devices for scanning, computing, navigation. They had no concept of a device that did all of these things simultaneously and also contained all of human knowledge and fit in a shirt pocket. The smartphone is more extraordinary than anything Gene Roddenberry imagined, which is itself a remarkable thing to say about the man who imagined faster than light travel. Video calling, 1982. We covered this in an earlier video. Blade Runner's vision of video calling as a public booth service, expensive enough that Harrison Ford has to fumble for change before making a call. Ridley Scott imagined the technology correctly. The economics and the delivery mechanism were completely wrong. Video calling is not expensive. It is free. It is not in public booths. It is in your pocket, available anywhere with a signal. The technology he imagined for 2019 arrived early, and then got better, cheaper, and more ubiquitous than he ever conceived. This is the pattern you see repeatedly. Science fiction imagines the technology, but misjudges the economics. It imagines things that will be rare and precious and expensive, because that is how new technologies behave in their early stages. What it fails to predict is how quickly the price collapses and how universal the access becomes. The earpiece translator, various Star Trek's universal translator, the technology that allows the crew of the Enterprise to communicate with alien species in their own language in real time, was pure fantasy in 1966. Google's Pixel Buds, released in 2017, offered real-time language translation in your ear. Point a conversation at someone speaking a different language and hear a translation in your earpiece as they speak. It doesn't work for Klingon yet, but the gap between the fantasy and the reality is now measured in accuracy and language coverage, rather than in fundamental technological possibility. Surveillance Everywhere, 1949. George Orwell published 1984 in 1949. He imagined a society of total surveillance, telescreens in every home and public space, monitoring citizens continuously, with no possibility of privacy and no escape from observation. He was imagining 1984. He was describing 2026. There are now more CCTV cameras in the world than there are human beings. London alone has over 500,000. China has deployed hundreds of millions, with facial recognition systems that can identify individuals in crowds in real time. The social credit system being implemented in various Chinese cities would have been immediately recognizable to Orwell. The difference is that Orwell imagined surveillance as something imposed from outside, the party watching you. What he didn't predict was that we would voluntarily install surveillance devices in our own homes, carry tracking devices in our pockets, and share our locations, movements and opinions publicly and continuously on systems designed to monetize that information. We didn't just accept Big Brother, we invited him in, gave him a smart speaker, and asked him to play music. The AI assistant, multiple HAL 9000 in 2001, A Space Odyssey, the ship computer in Star Trek, Skynet in Terminator. Science fiction has been imagining artificial intelligence for decades. What it imagined, almost universally, was superintelligence, AI that was either godlike in its capability or existentially dangerous, usually both. What it did not imagine was something stranger and more ambiguous, an AI that is remarkably capable at some tasks, surprisingly limited at others, available to anyone with an internet connection, and already embedded in hundreds of millions of daily lives, answering questions, drafting emails, writing code, generating images, having conversations. The science fiction imagination ran to extremes, HAL or Skynet. The reality is something more interesting than either, a technology that is genuinely transforming what individuals can build and do, that raises genuine questions about labour and creativity and truth, but that arrived not with a dramatic moment of awakening, but gradually, incrementally, through 1,000 small product releases. The AI is here. It just didn't announce itself the way the film said it would. What does this tell us? Science fiction is not prediction. It is imagination in conversation with anxiety. The things it gets right tend to be the technologies, the form of new devices, the capabilities of new systems. The things it consistently gets wrong are the economics, the sociology, and the politics. How those technologies will be distributed, who will have access, what the unexpected consequences will be. The technologies arrived. The human responses to them were stranger, more complicated, and more interesting than any of the writers imagined. If this made you think, hit like, it helps. Subscribe for a new video every Wednesday. Out there is exactly where we're going.